So welcome everybody, beautiful beings out there. Welcome to one more episode of the Art of Being podcast. I am thrilled for our next guest, Jess Johnson. I am so excited for this conversation. She is an amazing EFT practitioner and a life coach. As a former therapist and U.S. Army veteran with roots in working in corrections, there is nothing that she hasn't seen or heard, allowing her to hold space for even the most complicated headspaces. Powerful mindset coach meets psychological acupressure with a dash of magic. I think that's the best way to describe who she is. And the reason why I'm so thrilled to be chatting with her today is very selfish because we're going to go over her journey and how she used EFT to personally help her with public speaking, which was my most phobia that I had, and also with arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia.
There you go. Thank you, Jess. So welcome, Jess, for being here with me. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patty, for starting the conversation.
Oh, of course. So let's start because you used to be a therapist in the Army, or no? Is that two separate things?
Yes. Nope. I was a therapist in the correction system. I used to work in detention, county level detention center in Maryland, where I'm from. And I grew up in the military. Both my parents served, and I started seeing kind of, just a bunch of veterans were catching my eye, coming up on my caseload in the corrections system at the same time where I was really looking to have more adventure in my life, travel more, just do something really different. And so the only rational thing was to join the military. And so I joined the military when I was 32 years old. And I was an active duty therapist, an active duty licensed clinical social worker in the Army for 5 years.
5 years. Wow. Yeah. So you've seen a lot. And
yes.
What made you, so tell me about this public speaking. I don't know if that's what made you become a life coach. And so tell me about how you got involved with EFT. And when did you notice this public speaking come up?
So it's interesting, my fear around public speaking was a side effect I guess the lessening of my fear of public speaking was a side effect of me finding EFT, finding coaching, and working on other areas of my life, namely my confidence. And so the confidence in self was kind of manifesting in this fear of public speaking, because when you're not confident about what you're presenting on, of course there's terror. There's all this fear of screwing up. And when I started really working on stepping into who I am and being authentic about that, the fear of public speaking drastically lessened because, so if I screw up, if things aren't perfect, so what? Is the world ending? Likely not. And so I see that as a direct impact because everything I did through EFT and coaching really helped me step into that confidence and just be able to kind of own who I am as a public speaker. And also it helped me prepare more for public speaking events or podcasts or any kind of interview. Whereas before, my fear around public speaking was so wrapped up in, I'm just going to get it wrong, that I started focusing on everything that could possibly go wrong instead of giving myself time. I think of a space and grace to just back up and be like, well, what if it goes right? What do I know that I feel really good about? And let's put my attention there. And that really helped me.
Wonder if, because for me, a little bit about my story with public speaking phobia, because I consider that I had a phobia, not a fear. We started noticing when I was going to college and I went to business school. So every end of the semester, you have to present your report, your paper that you work through the entire 6 months. And right at the time, I started having physical pain. My neck started getting sore and tense, and out of the sudden, my body couldn't move. I was starting to wear a brace, and it got really, really bad. And I had nurses coming to my home, giving muscle relaxer, painkiller. I started going to doctors and doing MRI, and people like, oh, you have herniated disc and this and that. And you name it, I spent 3 years doing that on and off, on and off. My mom was the one who noticed that after 3 years of going to university, she's like, wait a minute, she saw a pattern. Wait a minute. This happens every time that you are in your final. What happens during your final? And, when mom says something, sometimes we completely ignore it, right? I'm like, shh, what are you talking about? There's nothing to do with finals, right? But afterwards, I start realizing, no, it is, because besides having this crazy episode of physical body paralysis, I had the normal public speaking fear. Like during the day that I had to present my paper, my palms were sweating. I was going to the bathroom, going down to the bathroom and doing, number 2 and coming back and having palpitation and getting nervous. So I had the normal one on top of having this crazy episodes of my body physically getting so stiff that I couldn't drive, I couldn't move my body, right? So I didn't associate it that was all parts of the same thing, and I lived with that through 5 years going to this university. And then I got off there and then things got better, but it manifested in different areas of my life. For example, I couldn't go in a job interview. That was a public speaking for me. Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't do public speaking for me wasn't like speaking in front of a public, like a group of people. Just being in front of somebody that I was going to speak, it was already crazy for me, And then I also had in my mind that I had a fear of sales. I couldn't do any sales job, and I was offered all the time to do sales job because they thought, oh, she's so bubbly, she's so personable, she'll be great in sales. And I was like, hell no, go away. But then I realized that afterwards, the sales was part of a public speaking, was a form of public speaking, getting in front of somebody and selling something, right? And talking about something. And yeah, it took me many years, and it created a chronic pain. I used to have pain throughout my entire body. It changed. It became like at some point after many years became depression, because then I'm living with chronic pain and I don't know what is the cause, what is the, the consequences. But as I was living 24/7 with chronic pain everywhere in my body, I started being depressed and was disguised in the pain. I wasn't sad. I wasn't the what we see as a normal depression. Oh, you're sad, you cannot get out of bed. And my doctor said, that's one way that depression can manifest. Your physical body, this chronic pain is depression. And so I think it's very important to talk about our body. For me, I became like an expert on my body, right? And I think you help a lot of people with how we connect with our body and ourselves and our feelings. I talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. So I'm a life coach, and within life coaching, one of the modalities that I draw heavily on, in addition to mindset coaching, is using EFT, which is emotional freedom techniques. It involves tapping on points that are rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. So you find them in acupressure, acupuncture, and these points are called the energy meridian points, and they're connected to our central nervous system. So by tapping through these points, we are essentially able to calm the central nervous system, specifically the amygdala, that part of our brain that is very well intentioned. It's there to alert us of danger, but unfortunately, it's not the smartest part of our brain. So it kind of thinks that everything is danger, everything is the equivalent of a tiger, like coming to murder us. And what happens is our brain perceives something in the environment that it mostly misinterprets as danger, right? So obviously, if you're playing in traffic or crossing the street and a car is coming at you and your brain freaks out, that is a legitimate or appropriate reaction to what's happening. But when we're getting ready to walk on stage or go into an interview and our brain is like freaking out like that, it's essentially telling us you're going to die. You're going to say something wrong. You're going to talk about sales. You're not going to do it right. And death is going to ensue in some way. And oftentimes what I watch happening with my clients is they get a feeling in their body. Their amygdala starts, flooding, starts alerting us to danger. And we believe it. We say, oh, I'm anxious. I'm scared. Something's wrong. We must stop. Do not go. But when EFT really gives us the ability to be like, hey, brain, what's this about? Like, what are we really scared of? Is this what I like to call like an appropriate reaction to this stimulus in front of me? Whether it's, response time, like I said, when we're in a car and we need to get out of the way, or is this unusual or abnormal for the reaction in front of us? And I never like to minimize. We all have different triggers to things, different fears. But when we give ourselves the time to really understand how that kind of mind and body connection works, so we can come up with a plan, kind of the easier our lives can be. And that's how we achieve emotional freedom. So I always like to say that EFT or emotional freedom techniques, it's not freedom from your own emotions. You're still going to feel emotions. They exist for a reason, but it gives you the freedom to not be scared of. How many times do we stop because we're scared of feeling scared, or we're scared of feeling anxious, or we don't want to feel sad? We live our lives trying to repress and be like, no, everything's okay here, instead of like, okay, how am I feeling? What might this emotion be trying to tell me?
And how did this technique help you with your fear of phobia of spider?
Yeah, so this is my like origin EFT story, really. But I got hired on to facilitate retreats for veterans that were transitioning from the military. And we were running retreats, week-long retreats out of a camp in Maryland. And I have had severe arachnophobia my entire life, and it had gotten worse. It was getting worse like every year, to be honest. And when I'm talking about, it's interesting how many people, I know you said you've experienced this with public speaking, and people are like, oh yeah, I don't like that. I don't like speaking either in front of people, or I don't like spiders either. There's a difference between I don't like this thing, it makes me uncomfortable, and what you described in terms of like the physical manifestations that were going on with you. I would literally be driving down the road, minding my own business on the highway, and my brain would be like, hey girl, there's a huntsman spider. It likes to get really specific. Huntsman spiders are like in Australia and they eat birds. They're gigantic. But it would be like, there's a huntsman spider crawling up your leg right now. And I would be like in traffic, white knuckling the steering wheel, freaking out, terrified to look down in my lap to confirm or not, that there wasn't a spider on me, knowing that there couldn't possibly be. But then I would be experiencing on the self-judgment that I was having such an irrational fear. So it was constantly this trap, this cycle of this is so stupid, Jess, like really minimizing. And when we think about what we said, sometimes I picture like my amygdala or our amygdalas as this like a toddler, right? These unregulated emotions. And I don't have children, but I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't tell a 3-year-old, oh, you're so stupid for being scared of this thing you don't understand. And so EFT gives me a way to like back up and be like, hey, you're not feeling dumb. Tell me about this. Backing up to, I got this job. There was a spider infestation. And so my first night, like I had to have one of the other facilitators come pull my bed away from the wall, do spider spray, bug spray all around it, and then leave my bed in the middle of the room because I was convinced if it was pressed up against the wall, then the spiders were going to crawl up the wall and then like come for my eyes. I said, a very big imagination. And so I didn't sleep at all that night. And the next day I told one of the other facilitators, like, hey, I'm terrified. This is what's going on with me. I didn't sleep all night. I thought they were coming for me. I see them when they're not there. I'm constantly preoccupied by thoughts of spiders. And she was just like, oh, have you heard of EFT? Let me teach you this thing real quick. And literally in like 2 rounds of basic EFT, which is just where we admit how we feel about something, the truth of how we feel, even though I am terrified of these spiders and it's making me feel really irrational right now. We combine that with an affirmation of acceptance. I accept myself and I honor how I'm feeling. And we do that while we're tapping on the points. So we're telling the amygdala, we're telling the central nervous system, hey, even though you have this going on for you right now, I'm here, I'm listening, I accept you even with all of this. And so 2 rounds of that.
Wow.
18 months I worked at this camp, and let's be clear, I do not want to go play with spiders. You're never going to see me like, I don't like to say never, but it's not likely that you're going to see me with like a tarantula pet or anything like that. But 3 years ago, before I found EFT, even telling you the story, I would have been incapable of doing that while sitting as I am now, which is with my legs underneath my desk. I would have been like, oh, I can't say the word spider without summoning to all of my legs. So that's a great example of how EFT can help work with phobias like that.
So it's interesting because I like to have like the expectations. We can remove that phobia, right? That crazy, really big irrational fear to just like, okay, I don't like this thing.
Right.
Right. It's not like, oh, you're 100% going to remove, which it can happen, but not having that expectation, I think it's a big thing, right? Because when we are in that phobia mode, that phobia is controlling us. That's one of the things that I noticed with my phobias and fears is that those phobia and fear, they were controlling my life. They had such a power over me, my life, that I was doing things or not doing things based on that.
Yes.
I can describe that I was a prisoner of those phobias and fears. And when I removed them, what was on the other side of it was freedom. That sense of freedom for me was huge. Like, oh my God, I can choose now to do what I wanted to do.
Totally.
Dictated by that phobia. And how many people in the world are suffering with phobias and fears, and they cannot even wrap their mind around that they can remove that. So they don't have power over them.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. My mom had fear of a spider. And I remember as a young child when she's holding my brother and she almost dropped my brother in the floor when a spider flew over, because in Brazil, we have those flying spiders.
Wait, flying spiders or flying cockroaches? Because that sounds like something.
Sorry, roaches. All right.
That sounds like something I need to go back to square one with.
Roaches. Thank you. It's like
never going to Brazil. Check.
Oh, that's funny. Yes, that would be interesting, right? No,
it would not. That is not the word I would choose.
Right? And I think she actually transferred that. She had a phobia. She still has it, but she transferred that into the kids, and we all grew up being afraid of roaches.
Yeah.
We didn't come up with this phobia, but we were all afraid. And even as an adult, if a small roach doesn't freak me out, but a big roach, there's no way I'm gonna go there. There's no way. I scream at my anybody that is around me is like, roach, you know. But it's not interesting. Like even parents growing up with a phobia, they can pass to their kids that energy, that vibration.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because this is what I'm trained in as a certified EFT practitioner. So this happened, and I'll use the example of phobias because you so perfectly offered this to me on a platter. But lots of times when we experience phobias like this and we can't think of a time, like, sure, it can be startling when something flies at us, it's gross, but we've been told over and over again, right? So it sounds like you somewhere between the ages of 0 and 6, which is where our brains are so like moldable, right? And we are learning things about the world that we don't necessarily have decisions in because we're kids, right? We're literally getting imprinted on by the people who are authority figures in our life. So whether those are religious figures, social figures, teachers, media, our parents, all of those things, they're teaching us what to think about the world. And then we are continuing to reinforce that. And so when we're a kid and we see such a startling reaction from a parent, our brain goes, oh, that is definitely a tiger. We need to be terrified of this forever. And so as a practitioner, when somebody comes to me to do like kind of a deep dive, I'm trained in being able to identify and actually find those subconscious memories where we first learned our fear, or we first learned our doubt or anxieties. And then I apply EFT, or I help them to apply EFT specifically on those memories, which has a direct impact almost immediately on the here and now. And so it can happen really quickly. And it's amazing. Like,
Wow.
that's what I call a lot of the work that I do with EFT. I equate it to time travel, because it is the closest thing to time travel until who's the Tesla guy, Elon Musk, maybe builds a time travel machine. But it's the closest thing to time travel that we have here, because I help my clients literally change those images with, we call it imaginative completion, and be able to like teach that part of us that is maybe still 3 years old in our like energetic field, still reliving, kind of like Groundhog Day, every day seeing parent scream at the flying roach, and then they're just like, of course this is dangerous. And then as an adult, we're constantly seeking out reinforcement of, oh, there's that thing, it's danger, don't go near it, don't even think about it.
Yeah. Wow. That is very interesting. And I love that for all the parents out there listening to this, it's very important to be aware of this, right? Very important. What messages are you giving to your kids, especially within the age that they are forming their beliefs in things? So very important, parents out there, please pay attention. And as an adult, if we grew up with some of those fears, they can come to me. It's interesting because I knew about EFT, and then you see, videos everywhere, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to use, and I tried doing myself, but I always get stuck. Like, what do I say? I know they say things, and then they say things, and then they change, and then they say different things. It's like, I don't know what to say to myself. Well, I know where the points to tap, like, but I know I need to say something in the beginning and at the end, and it gets so confusing. So I appreciate having you to actually guide somebody through that.
Well, it can be, and it can sometimes be easy to overcomplicate EFT, but it's a 6-step process. Hey, what's my problem? What's in front of me? So let's use anxiety as an issue, because we can all relate to that, right? And I also want to emphasize that our emotions exist for a reason. They are not a problem until we make them a problem, right? So I never want somebody to think about villainize feeling anxious, right? What is our anxiety trying to tell us? Should I be anxious in the moment? Like, what are the thoughts connected? What am I telling myself to this anxiety? And so with EFT, like, when you want to develop what's called your setup statement, which is what you're talking about, which is the truth of how we feel. I'm feeling anxious can be really broad. And when we start just saying to our brains, oh, I'm so anxious, I'm anxious, they're like, oh yeah, totally, you should be anxious about all these things. But there's volcanoes, there's spiders, there's roaches, there's public speaking, like yeah, let's talk about them all, right?
Yes.
So we can take a step back and be like, what am I anxious about in this moment right now? And narrow it down from there. Our setup statement can be, I think about it like if we were describing to a friend what was going on with us. Hey, I've got this podcast interview today. I'm feeling really anxious about it. And they would say, oh, well, what are you worried about? Oh, I'm worried I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm worried I won't convey how important this modality is. I would know nothing about this example, by the way, right? But, like you get it, tighten it down. What am I anxious about right now? What am I worried that is going to happen? Where do I feel when I think about this thing that's causing me anxiety right now? Where do I feel it in my body? And how do I want to affirm that it's okay that I'm feeling that way? And so our setup statement becomes, even though I'm feeling this anxiety about Patty's podcast, I'm worried I won't say the wrong thing. I'm worried I'll accidentally say a curse word. She'll never have me back. Like, whatever it is in that moment. And whenever I think about it, my chest gets tight. And on a scale of 1 to 10, my chest feels tight at a 6. Even with all that anxiety, even with that thought, even with that emotion in my body, I accept myself and I honor how I'm feeling. So that becomes your setup statement. Even though I'm feeling this, I accept myself with it anyway. And when you tap through the rest of the points, just keep it really simple. This is what I'm anxious about. This is where I feel it. This is where I'm anxious about. This is where I feel it. I think what you're hearing, some of the videos that the tapping solution, which is a fantastic app, and I do recommend it to learn EFT, but the tapping solution is something that is developed to appease the masses, right? They want anybody to be able to listen to a app or one of their tapping meditations on anxiety and be able to get something out of it. And so they do a lot of more words to encompass all of that. And then they're doing what I call feel good right now tapping, which is being able to speak to the emotion we feel in the moment and then welcome in positive affirmations only once we've honored how we feel that. And I do that in my practice too. However, when the client has identified a pattern, I am able to very specifically find and go to the memories that created it at whatever point in their life they got created, and then kind of weed them out at the root, right? So instead of having to do the same tapping meditation every time they go to do public speaking, or every time, for me, part of the issue with spiders was my husband is a rock climber. I love being outside, and I was having anxiety attacks whenever I tried to go rock climbing because you're sticking your hands in holes and all that. And like, I would just be like, what am I going to do if a spider crawls on me? And I would be clinging to the wall crying and have to like 2 feet off the ground and have to come down and be like, all right, I'm out. I can't stop thinking about spiders. I don't remember what the point of all that. And I'm sure there was one, but I forget how to end my sentence.
No, it totally makes sense. One of the things that I really appreciate what you just said is that honoring our feelings, especially for us women, we have a tendency, a lot of us have a tendency of not honoring, right? We are not allowed to feel that feeling. Come on, we have things to do, people to take care of it. Do not allow those feelings. I don't have time to feel this, right? So, and then we put pressure on ourselves and blame ourselves and kind of like get very negative ourselves. Like, what are you doing? Why are you feeling this? Don't feel this, right? So it's
totally
counterproductive. And then you are coming with an approach that is like honoring that you are feeling that way.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, yeah. I got chills, Jess.
Yeah. This is exactly what I work with in my practice. I work with women who want to just get out of this cycle, the cycle of people pleasing, the cycle of feeling guilty for putting ourselves first, the cycle of saying yes when we mean no, or vice versa. And being able, I like to think about it as I help my clients cultivate patience
Mhm.
with themselves so they can take a step back. What is really going on here? What is this feeling trying to tell me? How do I want to think about what's in front of me so I get, I can choose a different feeling? It's all about giving women choices and giving them freedom in order to choose how they want to show up in the world based on nobody's expectations but their own.
Yay! Oh my God, that is amazing. This is a great way to come to an end on this podcast, because that is a beautiful message, and a message that a woman out there should really listen to this. And so, Jess, if people wanted to connect with you, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Seeking a Great Perhaps One. You can also find me on Facebook. Jess Johnson Coaching Services is my business page. Jess Johnson is my personal page. And I love it when people connect with me, even on my personal page. What you see is what you get. You're going to hear, it all. I always want people to come away from an interaction with me feeling like their emotions are validated, honored, and nothing's gone wrong here. I've had this feeling, that's okay. And you get to see my journey and how I do that with myself too, because I'm very much a product of EFT and coaching and what doing all this work, the impact it can have on you, and then therefore everybody around you, right? When we put ourselves first, it impacts everybody else in our orbit for the positive.
Oh my God, so true, so true. Start working on ourselves instead of thinking like the other people need to take care of themselves. Like, let's work on ourselves first.
Show people
that
what
spreads out.
We get to be the example, right? The model. And then people are like, oh yeah, I can do this too. That's the best way to help the world have the greatest impact.
Jess, thank you so much for being here with me today. I truly appreciate you sharing all your stories, because I truly believe the more we share, the more we heal, and sharing is caring. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Patty.
And for you, beautiful listeners out there, if you resonated with me and want to have a conversation with me, head over to my website, www.pattyhoyt.com. It's PATIHOYT.com, and send me a message, or follow me on the Instagram at Coach-Pati Hoyt. Until we meet again, remember, be the light and feel empowered. Aloha.